Thank you. Councillor Iannicca.
Thank you. Well, the thing I better do first is apologize in advance because a lot of you aren't going to like what I'm going to say. And I'll probably have to conclude with an apology. But the first thing I'll say is, this is heartfelt, I have to give the mayor credit for showing a level of wisdom far beyond what a first day in office should show. It's not just right, it's the only game in town. The first thing I'm going to start with is empirical data on density. The report we were just given, the fundamental notes that I'm in, transit-oriented development, intensification corridors, transportation corridors. And all of you want to talk about putting transit where none of that is. It was many years ago, God rest his soul, Councillor McKechnie and I, Councillor Dale, went to a conference in San Francisco where there was a presentation on density by professors from Berkeley. And at the time they said, what's the densest city in the world? I don't know. And it was Tokyo, where they meet out coverage by the square foot back then. Okay. What is the least dense city in the world? And they said, Houston, Texas. I've never been there, but apparently they built it the way you pour water out of a pitcher. It just sprawled everywhere, and nothing's over 2 stories. As the discussion went on, a smarter person in the room, smarter than me, said, what's average? And the professor said, we knew someone was going to ask that question. So we ran the numbers, and average density in the world is a city called Toronto. If you'd have gone back to Toronto that day and told them that, they'd say, what, are you crazy? One more human being, my God, one more dog and we'll die in Toronto. We can't possibly take more people. Where does that leave Mississauga? We're 750,000 people. Give your heads a shake. Want to build a subway next to my house, go ahead. Who the hell's going to pay for it? Who's going to get on it? There's a lovely anecdote I want to share with you. I don't know if you missed it. There was a great seminal conversation, brief as it was, that illustrated this beautifully. I don't know how many of you picked up on it. It was in the paper this past year, and it was a gentleman from Caledon griping that he could not get his daughter, the student, the holy name of Mary. I'm scratching my head, so I intently searched out everything on it. And I thought, this poor farmer up in Caledon, the heartland feeds us, and we can't get his daughter to holy name of Mary. Well, the poor farmer isn't a farmer, he's a pilot for Air Canada. And he can't get his daughter to Mississauga Road. The answer to those people has to be, yes, and what part of that do you not understand? Instead of, let's build him a subway. The reality of the data that we are being presented, I'll address for you again. In the next 6 months, and I won't just throw out numbers, I'll be definitive. You've heard me talk about Elm Drive, the 4 acres I've got that came in at 1,400 units. Great news, we maybe saw him off at 1,260 on 4 acres of land. Really 3, because we may get a 1 acre park. And in my spare time, I'll be lifting the holding zone on the Baith property, I'll be lifting the holding zone on Monday on the Pinnacle property, and the Carraba property has come in. That is 3,000 units. All within walking distance in the downtown core. I'm going to look you all in the eye and tell every one of you that over the next 4 years on council, other than Councillor Dale, none of you are going to approve 3,000 units of anything. But if you want to, I'll give you mine. Oh, now everybody looks away, everybody leave the room. Oh, density, don't build next to me, oh my God. Can't have another home next to me. And yet, we're taking all the density in the downtown core, but God forbid, we give them transportation. I want to put this, with respect, Carolyn, this nonsense about a subway to bed right away. It came up during my campaign as well. And I stood at the corner of Highway 5 and 10, and I was talking to commuters that were going along Dundas. Okay, we need a subway. Can I just ask, help me out? And this is why I commend the mayor. Why do you need a subway? Am I to understand you're going to get off at Dixie and maybe go to the power center and bring something back from the Target store? Hell no, are you stupid? Oh, well, you're going to go a little further down along Automobile Alley and buy a muffler and bring it home. No, you moron. I want to go to Union Station. That's what I thought. So why am I laying $12 billion of track along a place nobody lives, that has no projected growth or development in the next 30 years because you want to get to Union Station? I think what you're telling me is you want to go up the road to the Cooksville Go, where we should have 15-minute service, because the stuff's already there. We have a rail line, we have a station, we're expanding it, or you'll go down to Port Credit and make your way across. Because you really don't want to do anything along Etobicoke, do you? Of course not. So why on earth would I build a subway there? Unless you tell me where all the density is going. And it's not. It's going along Highway 10. I mentioned this to you before, I'll mention it to you again. In what is certainly a geographic bigger area, Cooksville has more density today than the downtown core will ever have. Because it's all medium to high density. And I'd like to tear down half of what's there and build more. But I think we need a transit system to do that. I've got another one for you, for those of you in the hinterland. Be grateful, because every one of those people that goes in an 800 square foot unit, that now because of market value assessment is paying $4,000 or $5,000, they're not paying their taxes, they're paying their taxes and your taxes. Be very, very clear on that. That on an acre of land, I can put 200 families, get 200 pieces of assessment, give them this much pipe, give them this much water, give them this much sewer, they clean the snow, they take away their garbage, they don't get a community center, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they're paying for the big lots. It's a very little secret. You all know it, but nobody wants to say it. And then in return, I've got to hear, we're out here in Milton, and we can't get that, we can't get. The answer is, yeah, and what part of that don't you understand? In the history of this, and I've studied it for a while, truth be told, the LRT and getting that done for Cooksville is the main reason I've come back for another term on council. The examples that I know of that come to pass that speak to, let's leapfrog. Cities are built like a drop of water or like a volcano. The drop of water ripples out, the volcano grows up, and the lava flows out. They don't leapfrog. They don't build bridges to the next place. We've tried it before. It's called the SkyTrain in Vancouver. It was a miserable failure until development caught up, until the ripples caught up. Tried it also in England. It was called the Canary Wharf. An abysmal failure that took out the Reitmans because it was ahead of its time, because you leapfrog. Now the development, the density's caught up. Now it's an overwhelming success. The fact of the matter is, I understand it, that the arguments being made around the table are purely parochial. They are not based in any logic whatsoever, and they are not based along the lines of the evolution of any city and its evolution in the history of the world. Where our resources have to go is to create a critical mass, because at 750,000 people, you can't sustain a subway. What part of that needs to be explained to you? It can be given to us for free. If we have to operate it the next morning, we declare bankruptcy. They are expensive. We do not have the... You know, Manhattan, by the way, is roughly on the landmass of Mississauga. You know, they can send subways out to the outlying areas into a baseball field. The reason being, it's not the 50 games a year that pays for it. It's the critical mass back home that pays for it. You want to talk about business parks? How many jobs per square foot does a business park generate? That's the issue. Unless it's a node like the airport, the absolute number looks pretty good. When you assess it critically, it's not the be-all and the where-all that it would be. That's why great cities like Manhattan don't have business parks in their center. You don't have the critical mass that would make any sense. So it's time for the adult conversation, and I conclude, and I'll apologize again. I wish we accepted that we were stupid, including me, because then we'd acknowledge that we're stupid. Call the smart people that have done it everywhere else in the world. Everywhere else in the world? And say, could you just do it for us? Because it's time to do it. The next order of transit along our evolution is a light rapid transit line. We'll get to a subway someday. The first iteration, Carolyn, you're right, is along Dundas Street. They will keep extending it, and it will link up with our, we'll all be dead. I mean that literally, our children may be dead by then. But it will come to Highway 5 and 10, and if you study it in context, that's not an unusual distance for any great urban center that has millions of people to sustain it. And in the interim, development will take place, Dundas Corridor will redevelop, and what we were told, transit-oriented development along intensification corridors is where transportation corridors will go. It's obvious. It's just time to do it. But in conclusion, I promise, and I'll conclude with an apology, The next time any one of you say it, I'll say, and where are you putting the 20,000 units? Where are all the people going? Because if you want them, I'm happy to give you all of them. If Carolyn wants them, tell me where the 50 condos are going, tell me where the business part, tell me where the new script, and then by God you get one. But it's not a wish list. I know we're getting close to Christmas, but boy, I'd love it if my daughter could get from Carolyn to Mississauga Road. Yeah, I'd love it too if some other sucker's paying for it. But it doesn't work. It's never worked anywhere else in the world. Why would it work here? So let's evolve the way a normal city revolves. Let's reward density, because you're all the benefactors of it. Let's not talk about smart growth and then build stupid. Because on transit where nobody lives. And by the way, they don't want any neighbors out there as well. Let's just be clear on that. They don't want any neighbors out there as well. And for the one area that's taking them, the 3,000 I'll have in the next 4 months, and Councillor, God forbid we give them transit. Please. It's time. And the final point I'll make is, the biggest piece of the puzzle, nothing to do with this, is the disgrace that it's one of the leading countries in the world, one of the G8, we're still the ones that don't have a national transportation strategy. That's the biggest problem. And as critical as I am around this table, the shame is at the provincial, federal level, that if we were any other jurisdiction in the world, it would have been done by now. Because you can't fund it on 8 cents out of every tax dollar. And maybe I'll close on that thought. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Then I would assume that you'll be moving the two recommendations at the appropriate time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson.